Hey gang, how long has it been since you've seen a carburetor video? Before we get started on that, ow, I laid my finger open. I was adjusting my fan with the power on like a dumb butt, and it bit me. Those blades are sharp. Alright, I've got a couple of choices for 3-volt carburetors. And on top of having a bunch of choices, this is from Mike the tractor guy, by the way, if I didn't already say so. Then he's also needing this bracket here. There's a gasket for it. There's also right here carburetor assembly instructions, which might come in handy for him, so I'll send those along. But this is the throttle rod plate that goes between the, there I go with the microphone again, hang on. At least whacking my finger took my mind off other things. You can see it's a little bit tweaked right there. I'll get that straightened out. But this plate goes between the engine block and the intake manifold. You need 2 gaskets, one there and one on the face. I checked my gasket supply. I've only got one, so Mike can cut himself out. I know that's the wrong one. That's the right one. But Mike can cut another one out of some gasket material. But one will go on the front, one will go on the back. And then there's the rod, and this is part of his problem, is that these are stripped on the one that he has. So these nuts do move freely, and he'll use those to adjust his high and low speed on his engine. And that's how you adjust the high and low speed. Turn this one up for max RPM, turn this one up or down for low idle, which would be 1100 RPM low idle, 3600 max high, full throttle. So there's that, and these have a little hole in them, and this rod here actually goes right in that hole, and then your cable can either come down from the top with a couple of nuts that go on the cable, and I think he said he needed some of those too, and I'll take a look and see if I've got a couple that I can toss in with him. In fact, I've got a bunch of cables over here, and I think there's some on these cables over here, so I'll take a look. I've just a boatload of cables. I'm sure that there's some on it, on one of them somewhere. So I'll grab a couple of those for him, and those will get used, one on top and one on bottom of the cable. If he runs the cable through the top to secure the cable on the small hole. There's a big hole for the whole cable to go through. The cable will go through this one as well, but this hole's a little bit smaller. And you'll put one of those capture nuts on the bottom and one on the top to get your throttle locked into place. So there's that for Mike, and we've got the gaskets that we're going to need. This is the intake to carburetor gasket, which I'm going to include for him. And when I take any of these apart, they always get a new gasket, so we'll get that taken care of. I've also got a new main jet or main emulsion tube adjusting screw, and a low idle, as well as a new needle. And I will also polish the needle, and I'll polish the seat on the carburetor to make sure that we've got a good seal. So I've been babbling for 4 minutes. Let's go ahead and cut the camera off. I'm gonna dig and dive and see which one of these is going to be the best candidate, and then when I do, we'll set the camera up and we'll start working on it. So stay tuned. Alright gang, I have partially disassembled the, making sure the microphone's in, partially disassembled this. I went ahead and pulled the emulsion tube out, and the emulsion tube is the very first thing that you want to take out when you are disassembling these carburetors. So, well, your metering screws first, then you take your emulsion tube out, okay? And on your metering screw, make sure that you back it off quite a bit, almost to the point where it's about ready to fall out. Just put it in maybe half a turn so it engages. That way, when you put everything back together, you're not going to end up with a ring on that needle. If you end up with a ring on that needle, you're not going to be able to get your carburetor adjusted correctly. And we've got our new idle screw. We pull this one out, and there's not much that can go wrong with them. And you can see this one's in really good shape. But you know, since we're going about this in a manner that sort of resembles professionalism, we're going to go with a new one. So we'll set the old one aside. And I have already started. This is a very specific tap, as is this one for the smaller flow jet updraft carbs. Okay, this particular one is a 1/4 32, and this one I believe is a 5/32 32. They're both 32 threads per inch. Let me get that off there so we can take a look. 5/16 32. Okay, and it's really important that you don't just run any old tap up these. I'm going the wrong way again. You don't run a normal tap up through here. Now these are actually thread chasers. So all I do, I come in, and it's a semi-bottoming tap so that it won't interfere with the seat. I just run that in, making sure I've got those threads good and clean, and I'm not putting a lot of tension or pressure on this. I am just making sure. Sorry about that, my woman's on her lunch break. Miss Zippo. Okay, you want to be really careful, and don't really wrench down on this, and be sure to go back and forth. Get those threads good and clean. 'Cause a lot of time you'll get oxidization and stuff like that, and you want it to be clean. I'll try to remember to put the link in the description where you can pick these up, but they're becoming very hard to find. These taps are made in Japan, so they're, you know, a lot better quality than just, you know, your generic China made. But keep going until that tap just barely bottoms out. You don't want to go any further. There, I bottomed out. Okay, now we just run her back out, and I typically will turn the carburetor upside down so that as I'm running it out, it'll pull all the junk out of it, but I will still go over to the air compressor and blow that out just to make sure. And to show you guys, this was a really clean carburetor to begin with, but you can see we've still got a decent amount of dust on there. So we did clean those threads quite well. So give me a second, I'm gonna go blow things out, then we'll finish taking the carburetor apart. So hang on. All right, everything's all blown out. So we're gonna take that last screw out of there. And this is a really good candidate for a rebuild. There's a lot of things that you want to look for. Got the other carburetors I could show you, but your intake, that one's not going to come out without a fight. Let me grab my 7/16 here and back that sucker off. Okay, and these plastic fuel elbows, you don't have to put Teflon tape on them because they seal pretty well. One of the things that you want to look at when you're redoing one of these, good indication that you're going to have a really dirty fuel bowl, is looking down inside where you just pulled out your fuel fill elbow, and you'll see a lot of oxidization in there. Let me go ahead and grab a carburetor and show you what I mean. I know there's one in here. I remember seeing it. Yep. There we go. Okay. See all that white in there? That would be one that you would, and all the white in here. But just looking in there will give you an indication of what you're going to get into when you take it out. And then you're going to want to neutralize all of that, yeah, that stuff. Oh, interesting. This one actually has a replaceable seat. There's not very many of them that do. If this one does, I do have a new seat that I can put in there along with the new needle. Helps baking soda and a water solution and just a toothbrush. That'll go through and clean all that up, and it'll help deter the oxidization. You can throw just, you know, a little bit of misting oil in there if the carburetor is going to get stored for a while, just so that you won't have to worry about it oxidizing while you're waiting for it to get assembled somewhere. Okay, this one came apart really nice. Didn't hurt the gasket at all. In fact, it looks, I may have already rebuilt this one because I noticed that the needle was in really good shape. So I may have already gone through this one. I did. I already went through this one. So, well, that's good for Mike and good for me. I don't have a whole lot to do here. All I have to do is really put it back together. But let's go ahead and pop the pin out here. Let me get in the right drawer. Getting little angle pliers. Get a hold of that and yank her out. And just lift straight up after you get that pin out. Just lift straight up and your needle should come out. And this needle's a little bit stuck. So let me pry up on that. See if we can't get it unstuck here real quick. There, that was easy enough. Yeah, I already put a new seat in it and everything, and a new gasket. So this one's ready to go. And that's what a new seat looks like. Now, not all carburetors are going to have them. So when you get a new, or a carburetor rebuild kit, it's going to come with a bunch of extra gaskets. This one's actually got the Viton. And I like these better. They are ethanol resistant, so they do a good job. That little hook just goes in and it hooks in either direction. Doesn't matter which way you do it, but it just hooks on that lip right there. Usually, I'll just go this way. There you go. And you just kind of want it centered over top of that tab. And just matter of reverse process. Like I say, I've already gone through this one, but for you guys out there that are rebuilding a carburetor that has not recently been rebuilt and is doing all kinds of funky stuff, I've mentioned the things that you need to check in here. Let me get that pin back in. There you go. And center your pin so that when you put the bowl back together, you're going to be in good shape. So now what we want to do is a blow test with it. And also, if we look, if I was holding this flat, completely flat, we can see that that float bowl is going to shut the fuel off way too soon. The float bowl, or the float itself, should be level like that. So I do need to take it back apart and bend that tab a little bit, or give it a good shove and see if that does it. Let me see. Yeah, that didn't do it, so I have to pull it back apart. And well, I guess that's a good learning lesson. I do have carburetor rebuild videos, extensive ones. They're older. You got to go way back to find them, but I have a 3-part series on rebuilding them. So anyway, we're going to bend that tab down. Just push it down. Not going to hurt a thing. Set her back in place. I'll tell you what, something else that I can do is to check and make sure that that seat is all the way down. Use a large screwdriver for that. A big one. use a big one. And be really, really careful. A little twist, and do a really quick twist. As long as you've got that seated in there good, you should be able to break it loose nice and easy. Let's see if we're lucky. There we go. Let's get that sucker out. So it was seated. We were in good shape. Keep spinning it till you hear it double click where it has come out of the threads, and we'll take a look at it. Yep, we're in really good shape. That's nice and clean. I'm happy with that. I should have marked on this or put a tag on it that I had already rebuilt it, don't you think? But that's okay. Never hurts to double check when you're not sure, but you could save yourself a little bit of time if it was already put back together, or already rebuilt rather. Okay, now I'll put the pin back in again. And yes, I'm standing right by the fire, and the temperature in here right now is it's a balmy 80 degrees in here with the wood stove going and the heat reclaimer doing its thing. Okay, and now we can see that our float is level. So I'm going to do a blow test real quick out of camera view, but I'll get next to the speaker, and you shouldn't be able to hear any air coming out when you're holding it upside down. Then you just turn it over, allow that needle to come up, and then you should hear I lost my clip. We're having a lot of difficulties here, aren't we? I have to take that float back off again. You guys are enjoying this, aren't you? Oh, the things that happen. Let's see here. Can we get lucky and get that sucker in there without taking the needle out? That would be a no. Or taking the pin out, rather. Then we'll do the blow test after we're sure we've got everything together. All that happened was the retaining clip fell off of the tab. Get her back in there. There we go. Put the pin back in for what? The 4th time? 5th time? Something like that. It's alright. No big deal. This is a super clean carburetor too, so it shouldn't give Mike any troubles as long as he pays attention to the fuel. Okay, our float, as you can see, is sitting level. Let me give it a quick blow here next to the microphone. Nothing. I'm going to turn it over and see if we hear any air. Okay, we are golden. Now we can put it back together. So you've got a little vent here with a little hump. Just match that up with the hump in there. And also you can just match up your screws. If you put it on that way, obviously it's not going to screw together. So we come back around here, set the two halves together, hold them together, run down your 4 retaining, or your, excuse me, I was talking about a 4-bolt, wasn't I? 3 retaining screws. I do remember this carburetor now. One of the bolts for the intake manifold was stripped, and I had to put a helicoil in there. So there's a helicoil shoved in there, and helicoils are just as strong as regular threads. But this pot metal, you don't want to over tighten these, or that's exactly what's going to happen. You're just going to pull the threads out, and we don't want to pull the threads out, right? Doesn't matter that I'm using the really big screwdriver because they fit in the slot. And you want to tighten these down, just cinch them at first, and then go around like you would tightening lug nuts. And you do not want to over tighten them. They don't need to be super tight. You are going to get weeping around the gasket. That is normal, and I'll show you why here in just a second. I'll show you with this gasket sitting down here. Okay, and then just a little twist to seat everything first time. Go around once, And I'm putting very, very little pressure on it. And then we'll come around again and just a tiny bit more. Not even a minute on a clock, okay? Just tiniest little bit more. Just barely, barely, barely tighten it. Alright, there we go. So now we know that our float is in good shape. It's got a new needle. It's got a new seat. It's got a new gasket. We know that we're nice and clean and clear in our fuel delivery port, so we'll make sure this is clear, and it is. Shove that sucker back in there. We're getting a little long on the video, aren't we? But this is for my buddy Mike, the tractor guy, so there you go. We got that. Now, last thing, be very, very careful that you do not cross thread that. And the way to do that is drop it in just like I did. And something else that'll happen if you get it cross threaded, that part of the needle will not make it through. Okay, that needle comes up right through here, comes up and goes through that hole. Wait, that hole right down there. Can you see it? Need a little light. There you go, you can see it. The deep hole, that one right down in there, comes up through that, and then it comes through the top portion of the carburetor. So with the carburetor assembled, it comes straight up through and then goes through. Let's open up the choke. Let's go this way. Nope, we got to go that way. Let me get a flashlight. Get the right light here. Hang on. I'm working on it. I'm also working upside down. Let me get a pointer. I'm just going to put this right in the hole so that you can see it. That needle goes, the emulsion tube goes right through there. Oftentimes, and I can see scarring up here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little bit of scarring here where somebody had put this back together and that needle went through, and when it went through, let's just go ahead and poke it through here. Right through the hole. Oh, it would go this way, sorry. Go right through the hole. Just like that. That's the way it goes into the carburetor and what it would look like. If it doesn't make it in that hole, what it'll do is it'll come up here, and people will take the carburetors apart without taking this out, and when they take it out, it's going to pull it out of that hole. It's going to come up here and scratch it and bend it and possibly break it at the weak point right here where these 4 holes are. And I've shown this before. Let me get my pointer again. You also have a couple of holes right below where the emulsion tube seats to the carburetor. You've got one little hole there. Sometimes there's just one. Yep, this one just has one little weep hole there, and that is designed to sort of pick up any fuel that gets in that area and send it back through the emulsion tube. And if it doesn't send it back through the emulsion tube, we all know what happens. Everyone thinks it's the float. It's not the float. It's that needle not being seated right. The fuel will come down, and we know that it's coming up through here. Well, the fuel will drain down there, come down to the bottom of your neck, and it'll start leaking over here. Let's say, for example, we've got this sucker together like this. It'll come down and it'll start leaking out here, or it'll start weeping out of here. And people a lot of times think it's the float. It's not the float. It's the main jet needle. So there's another way to make that video a little bit longer. Okay, let's get this sucker down. And I've shown this before, but I'm going to show it again. Make sure you make yourself a specialty screwdriver. any screwdriver will do. You can grind it, and that's what you need to do, is to grind it to make it so that it fits perfectly in that slot for the emulsion tube. That'll help keep you from doing any damage to that emulsion tube. So after you get it ground to where it fits good, round off all of your corners. Round them off, because you're in there, you've got that screwdriver wallering around. You want to make sure the neck is small enough, and if it's not, grind the neck down. But you want to make sure that that screwdriver is going to make it in there, and it's not going to bind or get into the threads. So there's your tip of the day. I guess there's a couple tips in here, isn't there? So like I said, when you start the needle, start screwing it in, and you can check and see. Get the flashlight again. Let's get it in the right light. You guys can see where the needle is coming through. You want to make sure that that needle comes up and goes through that hole. So just keep screwing it in little by little. Take it in a little bit, stop, and check. Whoop. Stop and check. And it is starting to go in. I don't know how well that's showing up. But make sure it goes in that hole. Because if it winds up riding up this part of the carburetor, you're going to have serious issues. Wow, this is going to be a long video. We're at 18 minutes. On this one, I got 4 minutes in the beginning. That's alright. We're going to do a long video. Okay. It just seated. Just. Okay. I can feel where it just seated. I've shown this in other videos. You want to take it, give it a decent twist, back it off, give it a decent twist, do that 4 or 5 times. Be sure that your screwdriver is well seated in there. You're always putting down pressure on it. That's why I shorten the handle on this, so I can keep the down pressure and keep good control of the screwdriver, so that I'm not holding it like this to tighten it. I'm holding it just like that to tighten it. So you do that a few times, and even after you use just the finest of valve lapping compounds and on your seat on the carburetor body itself, you'll still want to do that a few times. So after you've done that, leave it. You're done. You're golden. Then we'll take our idle metering screw, and we're going to run that by hand. It's knurled. Run that by hand until it stops. Right there. Then you're going to come back half, 1, half. That's your baseline, and that's where you want to start. And now remember, I said earlier, make sure that you screw this all the way out. This is your metering screw for your emulsion tube, what a lot of people just call the main jet. Okay. Oh, I don't have a gasket. I need a gasket for that. Hang on just a second, guys. I've got to get one. Alright, there we go. Got lucky. Got a gasket on there. You got to have a gasket on there. Make sure you've got one. Okay. Take it. Be really, really careful. You got aluminum going into pot metal. It's easy to cross thread them. So what I always do for just about any screw is I will back it up until I feel it fall into the thread. Right there. I don't know if you heard that click. Then bring her home. Tighten her on down. Once you tighten that down, go ahead, give her a good hat with the right wrench. Just snug her up. Got her snugged up. Now again, only with your fingers. I'll even do it right-handed for you. Very, very gently run that down just until the needle stops. No further. And then come back half, 1, half. That is your baseline. So there you have it. But there we go. There is a rebuilt carburetor by Zippo for Mike the tractor guy. And I believe I've also got his muffler set out. Yep, I've got his muffler set out. So everything but the spindle. So I'm going to go grab the spindle, and then I'll need to get a box all set together and get that box packaged up, get this stuff sent off to him so he's got something he can do in the winter time. Appreciate you guys sticking around for this long one. It's almost a musty-like video, but hopefully there's some good information in there, you know, about the taps, about a number of things. So let's see here. Installation instructions for carburetor overhaul kit. Welsh plug. That's interesting. That's for a different carburetor, but okay. I've got some instructions I can throw in there. I really appreciate you guys sticking around for this one. I know it's a long one, but I stayed on point pretty much. At least you guys can give me a thumbs up for that, staying on point. Now, if you would, right down here, click on that little smiling guy with the orange cap on if you're not subscribed, and then hit the bell icon for me. And then over here is a random video, and over here is my latest upload. I appreciate you guys stopping by, visiting with me in the shop, and I will see you on the next one. Later. I'm out of here. Ren and Stimpy in the house. Ren says I did okay.